It can be frustrating to be putting in work day in and day out with nothing to show for it. So, what do you do if you are stuck in a plateau and want to break through? This is one of the most common challenges I hear from clients who come to us. They feel like they're doing everything right, but nothing's working. And if that sounds like you, you're definitely not alone. Plateaus can be frustrating, especially when it seems like you've tried every diet, every workout plan, and nothing seems to move the needle. And I have some hard opinions on this, to be honest. I think most of the time when people say they're at a plateau, they aren't. They just don't have the right data points, they aren't tracking consistently, or they aren't doing the right things. And let's be real, if you're just guessing your way through fitness, of course, you're not going to see the results you want. So today we want to walk you through how to identify if you're actually at a plateau, why it happens, and how exactly to break past it. We're going to use every tool, strategy, and insight we've shared with our clients and that they've used to break through plateaus and achieve their goals.
All right, so plateaus. Here we go. I was thinking about this too. I think most of the time, or at least when a client of mine, or just someone's talking to me about a plateau, it has to do with like losing weight.
Mm.
They're like, I've lost, a few pounds, or I got really excited. Now I'm not losing any weight anymore. I don't know where to go from there. But I was looking at the gym the other day, and when this is recorded, this is what, like in mid-January. And it's kind of, I don't know where it is. You'll have to share your gym. Right now, my gym, we're kind of at that stage where we're starting to get a big influx of new members. And so like the last week, it was kind of like hit or miss. Like there was one day where it was just slammed. You could definitely tell there were a lot of new people there. And then it kind of tailed off towards the end of the week. But I know that they've been selling a lot more memberships lately, a lot more orientations, people coming to check it out. And so I was thinking about the motivation plateau, and in the beginning of the year, that's like when everyone is like uber motivated, right? They're at their max, their motivation. They're like, I'm going to change this year. I'm going to do this and that. And they get in the gym, and then a couple weeks, or maybe it could be a month or something like that, and they kind of hit like a motivation plateau. Because we've kind of talked about it before, that motivation is very fleeting, right? And so that's why we talk about having habits and systems and everything set up so that when motivation does fail, then we're still moving along and we're not kind of stuck. So yeah, that was just kind of the back of mind. I was just kind of observing, looking around the gym, and noticing a lot of the new members, and just thinking about, like, what could the gym do better, or what could we do as just a fitness industry in general to kind of make people aware of that. Hey, when you get to the point where, like, all right, now you're not New Year's motivated anymore, here's how we're going to help you to kind of get going still.
Yeah, because I always say motivation is a temporary feeling. It's great when it's there, and especially there on usually around the New Year's time where everyone's like, "Yeah, it's time to go. I'm locking in. These are my goals. I'm gonna do it." And then, yeah, we get to around this time of year, and then things start to slowly drop off. At least for me, I haven't noticed. I've never really truthfully noticed a ton of influx of New Year's resolutioners in the gym. Maybe it's because I usually go first thing in the morning, so most people like don't go at that time. But at least the gym I'm at now is it's more of like a semi-private gym, so it's very low key anyway. So luckily I haven't had to deal with the crowds or anything like that. But I've definitely had some clients who are texting me and be like, "It's madness! Like send help." One of them said that all of the people that usually go in the evening are coming in the morning because of all the New Year's resolutions. So now they're kind of invading on his morning times. I'm like, oh man, that's annoying.
Yeah, because the everydayers, or the people that are always consistent, they have their time, right? Like,
Mhm.
whether it's morning, whenever it is, they always have that time. And so you notice the people that aren't always there, at that same time. And it does, if you're used to kind of being able to get your own, the certain amount of equipment, and your space and the people that you get to talk to, all of a sudden it changes. And yeah, so there's a lot of change going on this time of year.
Yeah, is it super bad at your gym?
Not too bad. It typically, I don't notice a huge influx, like, compared to like some of the bigger box gyms. So it's a smaller YMCA. It's really nice. I really like it a lot, but we don't see a huge influx usually. But yeah, I could definitely tell a difference. And even like one of the membership people came to my office today, and she was like, she was just kind of took it to. She's like, and then I was like, "You all right?" And she was like, it's good, but it's been a long day. Nothing but new memberships and orientations and walking people around, and then doing the same thing over and over again. She said there's been a lot of people come in, so it's a good kind of like stress for her. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's busy.
And you guys just had a big snowstorm, huh? You survived that?
Yeah, well, so here a big snowstorm is like 3 to 4 inches. And for me, it was great though, because it's one of those snowstorms where we get a lot of snow, and all the kids can get out and do everything, and it's pretty, but they're able to clear the roads quickly. We didn't get anything else, and so like still do everything. The only time I don't like is when it's real icy and like you can't really get out and you're stuck, but you can do anything you wanted. So that was so it was a nice snowstorm.
It's a little day off.
It was a manageable snowstorm. Yeah.
Nice. Well, going along the lines of cold, I've still been enjoying my contrast therapy. I've been getting into it a lot more. The last time I went, there was full ice. Like the entire tub was filled with ice, and I still got in. That was the coldest one yet.
Wow. Wow. I don't know how you can do it. So does it feel like it's getting easier, or you're just
I I want to say yes, maybe. Maybe it's just because I'm enjoying the challenge. Like I really like the mental challenge of it. Like at that time I didn't stay in as long as I did the first time because it was way colder, but it was definitely more of a challenge and I got in and I was like, "Oh man, I don't want to put in my arms because like once you put in your arms and like, your armpit, it makes it so much worse." But I'm like, "I need to do it. I need to do it." So I would like dunk that in. So I do like the mental challenge piece of it. I'd even catch myself sitting in the sauna trying to half-ass it or get myself out of it. Like no one else would care if I miss it. No one's gonna notice because they don't force you into it, but deep down I will know if I don't follow through on the promise that I make to myself because like I did this to challenge myself and I set a goal. So I'm like, no, I'm doing it. I'm going all in. So it's been fun in that sense.
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I can definitely do the as hot as I could be challenge, and I can hang out. That cold. Woo. I'm probably out on that.
Yeah, the sauna for me is so easy too, because we do the sauna and then we go in the ice bath. I think that probably makes the ice bath a little bit easier too. But yeah, sauna is no problem. Everyone's in there sweating, and I'm literally just chilling. I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like this is comfortable.
Yeah, I would enjoy that for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool. Other than that, let's get into are you actually at a plateau? So I'd argue again that most people aren't. I think the first question you need to ask yourself, are you actually at a plateau or does it just feel like you are? Because I think most of the time people who say they're at a plateau are just guessing and they're going off of how they look or how they feel day to day, which ultimately isn't that accurate, especially when you're looking at yourself day to day. You're not going to see a lot of changes and we're usually pretty hard on ourselves to begin with.
Oh yeah.
So, to know if you're actually at a plateau, you need data. You need to track everything, your workouts, your nutrition, your progress pictures, your measurements, steps, sleep. When you don't have this data, you're guessing. And if you're guessing, it's no wonder why you aren't making progress. So 99% of the time, this is going to answer all of your questions, and 99% of the time, this is what's going to get you past your plateau.
Yeah, and a lot of times I'll get, someone comes up to me and say, hey, whether it's client mine or just anyone that's just asking me about weight loss, they say, hey, I'm not seeing that weight loss anymore, or I'm not seeing it at all, or whatever it may be. And then you're asked, okay, well, so like how many calories are you eating? What's your protein intake every day? And they're like, I'm not quite sure, or I don't know. And so just like you said, if it's really hard for us as professionals to be able to look at that and say, well, this is where we think you need to be going, or this is the direction that we think you should go, or what we think is going to fix this, because we don't really know. Otherwise, we're just kind of randomly throwing out darts type of thing. And I get it. Sometimes it seems overwhelming. A lot of times you say the word tracking, people are like, oh, I can't do that. I don't have time for that, and a lot, and I think a lot of times it's because we make it way more difficult than it has to be. It can be simple. There's a lot of apps out there now, but it doesn't even have to be that. It could be simple as just writing things down in a notebook just to get information down. And even if someone came to me and said, hey, I'm not tracking in an app, I don't know exactly, but I've written everything I've eaten for 2 weeks. Like, okay, I could definitely work with that.
Yeah. And we have a coaching app for this where it puts everything into one place to make it super easy to track and see all that data. But there are lots of other great apps out there if you aren't working with a coach or whatever that automatically kind of does that stuff for you. So ultimately, it doesn't take that much time out of your day. Like I always say, tracking food takes 2 minutes out of your day. While your workouts technically doesn't add any more time to your day because you're just doing it while you're resting, which you're going to be sitting there doing anyway. So a lot of this stuff is super simple and just takes a few minutes out of your day to do. It's just a matter of getting in the habit and finding the right systems for it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say someone is like, okay, I'm all in. Like, I want to start tracking. What do I track? So one of the things, and this isn't in any particular order or anything, but I definitely want to track your workout stats. And I think that's one thing that either people do it for ego type of thing, oh, I want to write down how much weight I can lift type of thing. Or they're like, why would I need to do that? It's like, one way or the other, kind of extreme. But basically, you're tracking your workout stats. So it helps us to look at the progression in the gym. I mean, I don't know how many times if I haven't tracked, I'll go do an exercise and I'm like, I can't remember what I did last week, or what I don't know. I'll just add the weight, and then before I've done a couple sets, like, oh, you know what, that's too light, or and so you're just kind of spinning your wheels a lot of times. So you want to look at like what's your strength looking at each week, because one of the metrics we look at is, are you getting stronger? Sometimes things don't change. Maybe your weight isn't changing in a couple weeks, but you're getting stronger, then that's a huge win. And that's something we want to look at. So what are your reps? What do your sets look like? What's your programming look like? Maybe you've been doing the same thing for 2 years. Oh, and that can be common. People just kind of do the same thing over and over because they get very comfortable with it. Or the opposite, right? They're just randomly throwing stuff at the wall. They just show up and they just do kind of whatever's available or whatever they want. And you should definitely have a plan going in. And programming is very important. Right, so you need to be actively trying to improve your reps, improve the weight that you're doing on a week to week type of basis, and if you are seeing that constant progressive overload, you're progressing, then that's a really good sign that you're on the right track.
Yep, major key there. And then going along with the progress pictures that we mentioned earlier too, you should be monitoring your progress pictures because a lot of times people say they're at a weight loss plateau when in reality they are losing inches, they're looking significantly thinner and leaner, they're recomping, they're building muscle. So it's not actually a plateau. They just feel like they're stuck because they're looking at the number on the scale and it's not moving. And so I think a lot of things is just making sure that you're looking at different areas of progress, not just that number on the scale, because again, the number on the scale might move, but your body composition is changing, your strength is increasing, your energy is increasing, you're getting better sleep. There are so many other areas to look at that mean you're making consistent progress and not just that number on the scale. So looking at your progress pictures, taking body measurements, and of course weigh-ins too, to just give you a clear picture of all the trends over time and not just the daily fluctuations.
Yeah, and then of course we talk about food. That's it's very important to be able to track your food, to be able to have a really good idea of where you are, and you don't have to track for the rest of your life. It's very good to be tracking consistently, at least for a while in the beginning, just to know like where you are and where you're going. And then also like things like sleep. You track your sleep. I think that's one thing that no one really thinks about. And of course, there are devices out there to track your sleep, but you could even just be as simple as how many hours of sleep am I getting each day? What was the quality of sleep? When I woke up, and how did I feel? Was I energetic or was I super tired? And even just writing those things down, it's kind of like dreams. Like, you ever had a dream and then like you wake up, you don't tell anyone, don't think about it, then you're like, oh, I totally forgot what it was.
Every day.
But if you have a dream and then you tell someone about it, then you remember it better. So it's kind of like, when you wake up, you may have forgot the next day. I don't know how I was feeling. I just woke up and got ready for the day. But if you write it down, you look at it for a week. Oh, you know what? Every Monday and Tuesday, I was really tired. Well, let's look at what happened the night before, type of thing. And then steps. I think that's probably something that's very common. A lot of people have some kind of device, whether it's their phone or something that tracks step. So that's usually out there. But that's just another metric we can look at as well. So, most of the time, when we're tracking, that gives us the data to kind of look at and say, okay, here's what is not going well, or here's what might be preventing us from reaching the goals we want to reach.
Yep, answers all the questions that you have. And speaking of steps too, I heard you got a new walking pad for at work.
Yes, how cool is this? So I was able to get a walking pad for the classroom, and I just got it actually today, or I just opened it up, and so obviously I'm going to use it as well. Like, I was during my break, I was able to grade papers and I was responding to emails while I was walking along. It was awesome. I loved it. But I'm going to have kids walk on it as well, whether it be for a kid that, I just think kind of needs some space or some time to get some energy out, and or as a reward. Anything you can bring in new, the kids are like, "Ooh, I want to walk on that thing." And it was pretty entertaining because I let every kid hop on it today just for like a minute or so, just to kind of feel it out. And a couple of them were kind of comfortable with it, and a couple of them said they had walking pads at home. But most of them, it was like they never walked before. They get on it and they're like, "Whoa!" They're stumbling. I'm like, "Just walk, one step at a time." And they're like, "Oh, okay, I got this." So it'll be pretty cool. We'll have the fittest class in the world, so that'll be awesome.
I love it. Starting them young.
Yes, yes.
I know getting more steps is kind of one of your intentions too going into this year, so I'm sure that will help a lot with that.
Yes, I mean, I've talked about this before. It's just a struggle if I'm not really intentional about it. If I don't purposely add steps to my day, whether it's after meals or just while I'm watching a series or something. I just started watching Dune Prophecies. I don't know if anyone out there is watching it. It's fantastic. But so I've been or sports, of course. I hate just sitting there watching a game doing nothing. So like it's fantastic to walk or run in place, things like that. So I'm working on it. I'm definitely improving. So again, it just takes consistency and trying to get in every day.
Yeah, it seems like, well, you and Kate, our other coach, also have walking pads now, and then a bunch of my clients have it too. So I'm gonna get convinced at some point to get one. Usually, I just go walk in my apartment gym, but it would be definitely convenient to have one in my apartment.
Yeah, and I mean, ideally, I'd rather walk outside, in
Yeah,
nature and everything. But it's so awesome, especially if the weather's not great, or like I said, I want to watch a game. I can't watch the game while I'm walking outside, type of thing. So
yeah,
it's very convenient, doesn't take up a lot of space, and I love them. I think they're super cool.
yeah, game changer for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so next up with nutrition. If your goal is weight loss, you need to be in a calorie deficit. Period. End of story. That's non-negotiable. The numbers don't lie there. But the thing is, many people think they're eating in a deficit when they're not. And so that's where tracking your food is essential. And this is usually step one in getting clarity on what needs to change. Again, we need to be in a calorie deficit. If the scale isn't moving, you're not in a deficit. And that just might mean reassessing portion sizes or being honest about the stuff that you're eating and not tracking, or the stuff that you didn't log, or just having bites of stuff here and there. And then also protein intake. We want to make sure we're getting enough protein. This is essential for building muscle and for fat loss. Helps keep you full, support recovery, and just maintain as much lean muscle as possible, even if you're trying to lose weight and lose fat.
Yeah, I was thinking it's kind of like it's trying to stay on a budget. How many times you spend like a few dollars here or there, buy coffee, whatever, and you're like, oh, it's just a few dollars, and that alone in a little bubble, that is nothing. But if at the end of the month you're trying to save some money and you're like, man, like where did it go? Like, well, you spent $5 here, $4 here, 350 here, 250. And if you didn't really track it and you're not really paying attention to it, then you don't know where it goes and you're confused. Why am I not saving money? So I think it's the same type of process.
Yeah, a lot of people, again, they say I'm eating healthy, or I'm doing all the right things, and then they put in the numbers like, oh wait, I'm eating 4,000 calories, or I'm only eating 100 grams of protein. So when you have the actual data and you actually go and track everything, it's usually very eye opening to where you're at, and even if it's just small tweaks on like what's missing. If you need to get to that next level, it's so important to have that data, so that way you know exactly what needs to change.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just simple fixes or that make a huge difference. But again, you probably wouldn't have known it if you hadn't been looking at it and tracking that data.
Yeah,
So,
because on the outside it just seems like, oh, I'm eating healthy, I'm eating right, I'm getting a lot of protein. But are you actually? Like, do the numbers show that?
yeah. So again, and then whole food focus, right? So we want to make sure that the majority of what we're eating is whole, nutrient dense foods, like lean proteins, vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, and they're going to provide all the vitamins and minerals that your body needs to thrive. And then you just adjust as you need. If your weight is stagnant, it's not moving, it's not going where you want to go, but you are seeing other signs of progress like better energy, which that's another good metric. Sometimes you're like, well, I'm not seeing the scale change, but I feel great. Like, okay, well, what's the problem? I mean, you
Yeah.
feel amazing. I mean, that's one of the biggest things. Or your clothes are fitting better, or they're a lot they're too big now. Like that's even better, right? Um, and then you might need to tweak your intake a little bit slightly. But basically, again, small gradual changes over time are going to be more effective in anything, whether that's with food or with exercise, anything. Instead of going all in, all out, 100%, intensity, a lot of times just a small, consistent over time changes make a huge difference. So again, the more data we have, is it data or data, by the way? I think, what do you like to say?
I say data.
I think I go back and forth. I mix it up. Trust me, the more data or the data you have, right? Anyway, the more data you have, the more it shows like, what areas you're improving, what things are going well, what things are not going well, what you can definitely improve on. And then it just allows you kind of, like you said, tweak it a little bit or fine tune or just make little changes that, like we said, in the long run makes a huge difference. All right. So if we're moving all at once, we don't know what's working, right? And let me take a step back. So what I mean by that is sometimes we want to change our workout habits, we want to change our food habits, we want to change our sleep, we want to change our steps, and we're doing everything all at once. And if we don't have any tracking, then we're like, okay, what is really working here? What's not working here? So a lot of times we want to be more simple and think about, okay, let's do one thing at a time, or let's change one, let's make one little change and see how that affects it. Again, got to have that data for it.
Yeah, I want to go back to, I want to elaborate a little bit more on scale and the energy and the strength and stuff that you mentioned earlier too, because a lot of people fixate on the scale. But again, that's just one piece of the puzzle, and progress is a lot more about, are your clothes fitting differently? Are you feeling more energized? Is your strength improving? Are you sleeping better? I actually had a conversation with a client last week who was feeling a little bit discouraged because his weight hasn't moved. But when we talked, he quite literally listed out a whole boatload of stuff. He's like, oh, I feel more energized. My clothes are fitting looser. Like my muscles are coming in. I'm feeling more defined. My stress is a lot lower. Like he literally listed the whole boatload of stuff. And then he's like, oh, but the scale isn't moving. And I was like, dude, hold up, rewind, look at what you just told me. And so I had to remind him that the scale is just one metric, but we are doing exactly what we intended to do. We are making all the right progress. We are exactly where we need to be. But it's just funny that a lot of people don't see that just because they're so fixated on that one number. But the scale doesn't tell you the full story. And if you're making improvements in other areas, you're not at a plateau. You're making progress. You just need to reframe the way that you're looking at it.
Yeah, they're like, so, but the scale, you know?
I'm like, throw it away. We don't need it at this point.
So we've talked about different metrics to progress clients for them to see everything. Let's talk about goals.
Yeah, another thing to consider is your goals. Are they realistic? Are they aligned with where you're at right now? Because sometimes people set goals that aren't actually achievable or healthy and then sets them up for frustration. For example, we had a client who came in and set some goals. She's like, I want to lose 10 pounds a month. And I was like, okay, hold up, slow your roll there. That's not going to happen because it's just simply an unhealthy rate of weight loss. That's way too fast. And so then we adjusted her expectations to something that's actually realistic. And then she started making consistent progress and felt better about it.
Do you think that relieves people of stress sometimes as well? Like if they're like, oh, I want to go out, I want to lose 100 pounds. You're like, that's awesome, but why don't we just focus on losing like 5 pounds? And even though like, yes, they want to lose that 100 and eventually they will, but if focus on that smaller goal, I feel like the stress is gone. Like the 100's a big number, but if they can focus on that smaller number, hey, let's just work on 5 for this month and see where we go.
Yeah, because that feels very overwhelming just thinking about how the hell am I going to lose 100 pounds?
Yeah.
Because just focusing on losing 100 pounds isn't going to do shit. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to lose weight focusing on that. It's just going to cause more stress and overwhelm and pressure on you. But like you said, you just need to focus on, I'd say just the first one because you can't lose 100 if you aren't losing one at a time. And so you need to focus on, we always go back to the daily habits. What are the actionable daily steps that are going to allow you to lose that 1 pound, to lose the second pound, the third pound, all the way up to 100. So like those are the things that you need to focus on as opposed to like the big, larger picture scale. Because with that, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, and you focus on those steps that you mentioned throughout the day, that plan that we have in place, eventually that weight loss will come.
And your goals should also evolve with you. Maybe you started focused on weight loss and now you're more interested in building strength or improving energy. And that's totally fine too. Goals are going to change. That's just a part of the journey. It's always evolving and changing as you go. And this is also where having a coach can be super important and just checking yourself and setting those realistic goals and targets and having an action plan in place to know that you're actually there to help build that confidence and see that consistent progress. Because I've had so many clients who come in stuck at a certain weight for literally months and months or potentially years at a time, and they've gone through that cycle again and again. And then they come in and literally in the first week, they bust past that plateau that they've been stuck at for months or years. It's always one of my favorite moments to see, and they're just mind blown.
That's awesome.
It really just is having the right system in place and having the right plan in place, tracking the right metrics, knowing what to look at, and being consistent with those basics. It really is a lot simpler than most people make it out to be.
Yeah, so let's say you're doing all that, right? You're doing all the right things, and you're dialed in and everything. You're tracking everything. You're consistent. You're recovering well. You're basically just doing everything that any expert has told you need to be doing, or something that we've told you everything you need to be doing. You're doing it, and you're not seeing progress. Sometimes it's because we expect it all to be done right away, right? Maybe you just started like last week, and you're like, hey. I have not lost 10 pounds yet. Or I have not, I haven't been able to lift more than weight this week or whatever. So a lot of times we just have to think about that this stuff takes time, and you have to be patient, and it does take consistency of going in every day and knowing that things aren't necessarily going to change right away. There's a Simon Sinek quote, and I'm just paraphrasing, but basically, he's like, if you go to the gym, you work out, look at yourself in the mirror, the next day nothing changes. You go to the gym the next day, look in the mirror, nothing changes. And you do that for a while before you start realizing the changes, but it might take some time. That's with any kind of thing that you're trying to change, anything that you're trying, any habit you're changing, or anything you're trying to get better at. It takes a lot of time, a lot of practice before things start clicking, and then you start noticing that change. So sometimes it's just a matter of, stick with the program, trust the process, and just be patient with it, be consistent, and you will see results down the road.
Yeah, consistency is a big key point I want to drive home, as usual. But you can eat all the right things. You can be in a calorie deficit. You can be crushing your workouts, tracking everything, applying progressive overload, doing all the right things for a few days or a few weeks. But it doesn't matter if you just do it for that time period and then fall off and then get back on if you're in that on off cycle, or if you just do it for a certain period at a time. Like, we need to be doing it every single day for weeks and weeks, for months and months. We need that consistency. It's not just doing it for spurts at a time. So if you're doing it inconsistently, that's probably why you aren't seeing the progress you want either. We need that consistency. We need to be doing it day after day, week after week.
Yeah, and I want to add something to that too. Sometimes it may be necessary where someone just doesn't have the time, or there's a lot going on, where they may not be able to work out as much as is ideal, right? And so they may be like, "Look, I'll be honest with you, I can only work out 1 day a week." And so we're not going to try to force them into working 4 or 5 days a week. If that's all they can do and that's where they're at, we're going to meet them there. But we also have to make sure that the expectations are, it's going to take longer to get to where we want to be, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But just know that the smaller the wins that we do, the smaller the stuff that we set up, it just might take longer to get there as well.
Yeah, which is totally fine, but that's a good point. Yeah, like I'm saying this like pretty hardcore and like, hey, you need to be doing all the things, but that doesn't mean that you can't give yourself grace. It's progress over perfection, like always. That's kind of our team motto that's become. It doesn't need to be perfect. As long as you're showing up and doing something, it's going to move the needle forward. But yeah, I think it's good to have those realistic expectations on what that's going to do to the timeline.
Yeah, exactly what it is. The realistic expectations. And then as we're going through, and I think kind of just taking a look at the big picture, and saying, okay, progress is never that straight line all the way up to where you want to be. It's kind of a big roller coaster. You have some dips, ups and downs. And sometimes it is, you have to remind yourself, I got to trust this process. I got to keep going. There's a lot of examples in the world. Also, I was reading this book and also just popped in my head. I was thinking about a football coach that coached for the 49ers a few years ago. And I think he went like 2-12 or something his first couple of years. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, get out of here! We're going to fire him." He ended up winning like 3 or 4 Super Bowls after that. And it's kind of like you got to have some time to build that foundation to get to where you want to be, right? And so sometimes you just have to look. We're getting to where we want to be. It's going to take time, So, and I know we all want to see those results right away, right? But we got to break down and say, okay, let's look at, as from a trainer side of things, we always look at let's remind our clients that I want to remind you of your small wins, even if they don't seem huge to you, they're building up, and so it just helps them, I think, feel better about the process and know that, hey, we're going to get there eventually.
Yeah, and I think most people tend to jump to conclusions too fast too. This is like when we're talking about being at a plateau, it's more of weeks and weeks of being stagnant and actually being stuck there, like, according to all the data. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much time you need to give your body to adapt. Every time we give clients nutritional adjustments or protocol adjustments, we wait at least like 2 weeks to see how your body is responding to that and making sure that you're consistent with that before we go and make additional adjustments. So give it time, give it patience. It doesn't happen overnight. Although I remember in the past I'd always do an ab workout. I'd be like, "Where are the abs at?" I think a lot of people have that mentality, but there's a lot of fluctuations in your weight day to day, week to week, and that is completely normal too. We just need to be consistent. Bottom line is be consistent. Especially looking at like the weight trends. If you're looking at the overall trend, not the day to day, Because like day to day, like we see it all the time. It's just like spike up and down, and clients always get in their head because like it'll spike up one day, which is again completely normal, no reason to panic, and I tell them this all the time. But they're always like, "Oh man, like did I do something wrong? Do we need to cut down?" I'm like, no, stay the course. And then literally the next day, it's like back down to a new low, and they're like, "Oh, nice, let's go." So stay the course. Everything is fine. You got to trust the process,
Yeah.
and then if you look at that weight chart, like week to week, it looks crazy. You can't really see much. And then as soon as you zoom out, you see the overall trajectory is just like straight down. And so if you're trying to lose weight, the trend should be going down, but you need to look at the bigger scale and not just that small micro scale because you're not going to see that. You're just going to see a lot of fluctuations and it's easy to get in your head that way. I had a bunch of clients too panicking after the holidays because their weight spiked up a little bit. But I told them, hey, it's just water weight. And within a week, they were all back down, hitting all new low weigh-ins. So just kind of another example that ties in. Just don't get caught up in that short-term fluctuations. Focus on the big picture and stay the course.
Yeah, if you want to compare it to like the stock market, you're going to have ups and downs, and if every time, you put your money into a stock that it went down, you pulled it out because you panicked,
Mm-hmm.
you would never make any money. You'd actually end up losing money, right? And
Yep.
so that's just like I said, we want to see the trend. If our goal is to try to lose weight, we want to see it trending down eventually, but there is going to be a lot of ups and downs. It's going to go up one day, it's going to go down a little bit, it's going to go up one day, the type of thing. We just want to eventually see it go down to where you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so tell us a little about recovery and stress. Talk about that.
Sometimes there is validity in your body is just not in a place to respond to fat loss, especially if you've gone through years of dieting and your metabolism may not be in a good place and your body's breaking down, no longer responding the way we want. And so sometimes people can feel like they're doing all the right things and their body actually isn't responding. And so this is why we always go through a rebuild phase first in our program as well. One, like the data is going to reveal where your body is at. And if you're not in the position to go and cut down and go into a fat loss phase, you're going to need to go into a rebuild phase first in order to cut food, and like rebuild and get your body to a place where it can go into a fat loss phase and see that consistent progress and get past that plateau. So there are different variations in this. Of course, I think a lot of it comes down to first tracking the data and knowing exactly where you're at and then making those adjustments. But sometimes like you are in a very rough state and you need to go through that rebuild phase first. And so there are, caveats to this situation too that I wanted to address.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we'll look at a client, or a client will talk to us about, they're like, I'm going to the gym consistently. I'm doing all my workouts that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm eating really well. I'm tracking everything. We're looking at it and they're like, all that looks really good. Then we have to dive a little bit deeper into what's going on in their life, right? So, if we've kind of neglected that stress management, if because there's going to be stress, right? So we're not talking about eliminating stress at all, but how we respond to that. And then, of course, if we're neglecting our sleep, these factors can play a huge role in whether you gain weight, lose weight, or how your body responds to the food you're eating. So it's very important. So sometimes that plateau isn't a physical, maybe it's a psychological or social or mental. So, if you're feeling, and we're not talking about the normal everyday stress, but if you're, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're like, my stress level's out of 10, whether it's work or family life or friends, social life, whatever it may be, that can definitely impact your progress. It definitely is going to impact your motivation and how you feel about yourself as you go through everything. So thinking about the strategies to manage, those life stressors. We've talked about this before, like meditation or journaling, praying, having a support system to go to, small group or something like that, can be super important. And sometimes that's what it is. It's like they're so stuck on that nutrition part of it, or that the working out part of it, that everything else gets put to the side. And once we get back, okay, why don't we start going to sleep at a normal time and trying to get some quality sleep, and let's start putting in some things like journaling or praying, and then that's when all of a sudden that's like that tipping point. That's when it starts clicking. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to see some gains. Whether they're losing weight or they're getting stronger, whatever it may be. So, you've said this before. I think it's really cool. Sometimes just like filling your cup, and reducing that mental and emotional stress. And that's so important to just life in general, but obviously breaking through those plateaus.
Yeah, stress and sleep are really silent killers. So many people, that's usually the last thing that people think and address, especially when they're trying to lose weight or not seeing the progress that they want. but it really makes such a big difference. Sometimes that's the only thing standing in the way of people breaking past that plateau is the stress and the sleep, especially if you're in chronically stressed state. Like you said, if you're at that 10 out of 10 stress, but chronically over time, or if you're just constantly not getting the sleep you want, it really does make a big difference. And that alone can kind of push you past that point where you've been at.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say you are actually at a plateau. Like you really have gotten to a plateau, right? So one of the things we've talked about is kind of embracing that process, right? So just acknowledging it, and I'm guilty of this. You probably are too. You know, sometimes it's hard to do that. So like, we want to break through that. We want to see, like you said, I want to be able to see my abs, right? Whatever it may be, whatever our goal is. And so we just have to know that, hey, there are going to be plateaus in the journey. There is that, there's never going to be a perfect, straight shot up line of progress type of thing. And the breakthrough comes in cycles. And so I think if you have that mindset that, you're not going to get everything you want right away. It's going to take some time, and there's going to be some plateaus, and you just have to learn how to break through those. Then I think you have a better mindset going into that.
Yeah, if you're actually at a plateau, like we established, if you've gone through all these things that we talked about, you're hitting everything to a T, been consistent, focus on recovery, the sleep, the stress, all of the things, then it just means it's time to make some adjustments, which is totally normal. I think a lot of people forget that you need to make those adjustments on your journey. You can't just do the same thing over and over and do all the quote unquote right things, but your body is going to adapt to it because your body is an adaptation machine. It is built to adapt whatever you're giving it as far as the habits, the intake, the training volume, everything. It's going to adapt and make that the new normal. So then your body's going to kind of level out and it's going to stay stagnant. So then you need to give a new novel stimulus so that way it can adapt and grow and build. That's the whole point of progressive overload. That's the whole point in what we do as coaches too, is to help people overcome that and can see that consistent progress through those adjustments.
Well, and it makes going to the gym more fun. It prevents the boredom. Other people that just obviously love working out,
Yeah.
you do too. But there are people that are, I don't love working out, but if you're doing the same thing over and over again, and then you're hitting a plateau, well, of course, I probably not want to enjoy going either, But if you're making changes consistently as you need to break through those plateaus, it makes it more interesting as well.
Yeah, so this is an essential part of the process. And training wise, there's a lot of different ways that we can do that and provide a novel stimulus. We're going to go through a few of them, but one is having proper training programming and phasing is very important. You can't just be going in, like you mentioned earlier, and just doing random stuff or not tracking your data. You need to have a set plan and know what you're doing and know how you're progressing. And applying that progressive overload with increasing the weight, increasing the reps, or even just applying progressive overload with range of motion, the control, the form. There's a lot of different ways you can do that and manipulate variables to provide a new stimulus. Even just the changing the tempo or doing isometrics. I have a few clients going through some of those phases as well. So lots of different ways to experiment with that, with the training and tempo and everything. Also just adding new exercises or modifying existing ones just to hit the target muscles a little bit differently. Each mesocycle typically should be very similar, but with a few minor swaps with some of the main movements and just different variations to, again, provide that novel stimulus and keep your body growing and adapting. But again, overall, it should be fairly similar. Then you can also incorporate advanced techniques like supersets, drop set, pyramid sets, stuff like that. And then easy one is train harder. I mean, I should say it's simple, not easy. Because a lot of people don't train hard. And when I'm in the gym, I see people like you're just going through the motions, not really putting a lot of intent. And you should be training. We usually like to put clients in anywhere from like the 3 to 1 RIR range, which is reps in reserve, which is how many reps you have left before you hit failure. But that means it should be very challenging. Your last few reps should be a struggle. That means you're on the right track. That means that you're getting close to that failure, which is what we want. You should kind of be second guessing, like, hey, can I actually lift this? You should kind of be like shaky. You still have control, but it should be very challenging. So that's like the level of intensity that we want to bring to our training.
Yeah, another one is periodization. So, like if someone's been doing that same type of workout over and over and over again, let's say for a couple months, right, or a few months, and their body has stopped adapting, then even if you're tracking everything else, you're doing everything the way you're supposed to, just kind of cycling in different intensity, different levels of volume, exercise selection, like you said, you can often avoid that dead end progress type of thing. I want to add something to the exercise selection as well. Sometimes just whether you haven't done an exercise in a long time, or you've never done it before, I think it's really cool. I like to look at these exercises as skills, right? And so It's like learning a new skill, and it challenges you not only physically but mentally, And so it's like you're learning something new, and so your brain's growing as well, which I think is awesome. Other than just your everything else improving. But then also in terms of exercise selection, the different movement patterns. A lot of everything we do is one direction, right in front of us. So things like unilateral or bilateral exercises, we're talking about pushing versus pulling, different forms of resistance. Sometimes we love free weights, of course, but if you've always been doing free weights, or sometimes throwing in machines, actually can help that, or different, using bands or different types of equipment, even different forms of cardio can definitely target muscles in a different way and encourage our body to learn to have to adapt to that.
Yeah, literally endless possibilities on how we can switch up the programming to provide that new stimulus. But again, that's also why it's important to have the proper programming too, so that way we're not changing too many different variables at once. Like there's a method to the madness, but yeah, a lot of different variables that we can pull to make sure that you're seeing that progress in the gym.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because I think at one time I remember there was a thing called like what do we call it in the gym? It was like muscle confusion.
Oh
They're like,
yeah.
oh, we want to like confuse our muscles as much as possible. So
No.
every day you went in there and just did like the craziest like random stuff. It was like my muscles don't know what's hitting them, and we thought it was awesome, And we're like, no, the programming is very important. We don't just randomly just do whatever to try to confuse our muscles. It doesn't get confused. So yeah, adaptation is much better to talk about and do it in a planned, focused way, right?
The term always cracked me up, and everyone's like, "Yeah, I gotta go in and confuse them." I'm like, "That's not how it works at all, actually."
Not at all.
And then another thing that we can do is just increase more activity if we want to get more adaptation, add more steps, increase your cardio a little bit, just add in more activity. And then fine tuning nutrition is obviously going to move the needle a ton. This is another thing that we need to be consistently adjusting. A lot of people get into a deficit. They're like, all right, cool, I'm in a deficit. And then they just stay there the rest, like the next few months, and they wonder why nothing's changing. And because again, your body is adapting to that. That's making it the new maintenance. And so you need to be making consistent adjustments as you go. And so if you've been consistent with tracking and still aren't seeing progress, try reducing your calorie intake slightly or adjusting your macros to make sure that you're in the proper ranges to get that body to adapt. All of these metrics, all the habits that you're doing, you need to be making adjustments over time. That's kind of the way to get past the plateau if you actually are at one. As you adapt, as you get consistent, your body is going to respond. And so constant adjustments are going to be key. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and expect the same results.
Yeah, and then another thing I want to talk about is hormonal imbalances, particularly with women. Hormonal shifts, things like thyroid function, cortisol, insulin resistance, can definitely slow your progress, especially after long periods of dieting, or intense training. So if you really feel like you're doing everything right things aren't changing, then it's I think it's really worth checking out. You go to a hormonal specialist and having them look at that. My wife, for example, she got to a point where she was a few years ago, just she was doing everything right, and she was just gaining weight, and she kept gaining weight, and she could not figure out. She's like, "What is going on?" And to be honest, I would challenge her that, are you really like challenging yourself at the gym? Like, are you really tracking your food? Are you really in this? And she's like, yes, I am. And so, she would just start Googling, using the old Google machine, and she found something. There's this disease called Cushing's, and it was basically causing her cortisol levels to just spike beyond control, and it was just causing tons of weight gain. And even her doctors were like, no, it's not that. It's something this, or whatever. So she really had to go, battle for herself, and finally they're like, okay, we'll look into it a little bit deeper. And they're like, oh, hey, guess what? You do have Cushing's. And I mean, if she wouldn't have pushed that, then I mean, you can die if that cortisol spikes too high and it gets out of control. So I definitely always recommend, if you really feel like, especially if you're a woman, if you feel like everything is going really well and you are just doubted and everything, and there's something wrong, especially that female intuition, like I feel like you guys know your
Mm-hmm.
body really well, and so if like you're like something is wrong, then I definitely think it's great to make sure that you go to bat for yourself and really push your doctors. And then even go into a specialist, something like a hormonal specialist might be able to check that and dive really deep into that.
Yeah, never hurts. Don't even get me started down the rabbit hole of doctors and that whole thing. I have very strong opinions on that too.
I can only imagine. All right, so let's recap this out. All right, so bottom line, a lot of times people think that at a plateau, meaning that they feel like they've done everything right and they're not making changes. Probably there's a lot of more levers to pull. Right, so it could be lack of consistency with the basics, not really having the right plan or the right structure in place. So before you think that I'm doing everything right, I'm just stuck, and it gets to like super frustrated. We want to make sure that we're doing all the little things we need to do. We're doing all the fundamentals. So following an actual really strong based proper training program, right? Progressive overload every week, meaning you're challenging yourself, pushing yourself in the gym, being intentional with everything, not just like kind of going through the motions and just doing things, but really thinking about what muscle is this working? Is the form correct? And really working hard, tracking all your stats, everything from workouts to food, steps, sleep, taking body pictures, measurements, ensuring that your nutrition aligns with your goals, right? So making sure you have the right calorie intake, the macro adjustments that you actually need, and then prioritizing recovery, making sure your body can recuperate from this. And that usually includes stress, sleep management, stress management, and then going through a rebuild or deload if necessary.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we forgot to mention too with the training is sometimes we actually need to go through a deload, especially if you're been training and you've been really consistent, you've been pushing yourself in the gym, going along the lines with recoveries, just take a week to deload. And usually that will put your body into a much better state and allow it to adapt quicker to the stimulus that you're giving it.
And that can be hard too, especially if you're seeing a lot of results. You go on vacation or sometimes you just need that week off, and your body's like, I really needed this to kind of keep going.
Yeah. So tracking the data, and again, make sure that you're making consistent adjustments to that data. Like we need to be like, it's great if you have the data, but you need to be using that to make the proper adjustments going forward. So keep that in mind. And then also remember that progress is more than just the number on the scale. Are you looking at the full picture? Are you looking at all the metrics, your strength gains, your progress pictures, how your clothes are fitting, how your energy is, your mood, overall well-being? Like these are all critical signs of progress that a lot of people overlook. Just because the scale isn't moving doesn't mean that you aren't making progress, because your body can be very much recomping where you're building muscle while losing fat at the same time. So just don't tie your worth to one project, to one measure of progress or one metric. Zoom out, look at the big picture, and then track the data that truly reflects your overall transformation. So if you want to connect with us, you can find us on socials in the show notes. And the best place to connect is going to be our private community. We run all kinds of challenges, giveaways, calls, and new content every day. And it's completely free to join. I have resources, training programs, nutrition guides in there to make sure that you don't get stuck at a plateau and can keep moving forward. And I'll put that link in the notes as well. And we will see you guys next week.